Hello everyone, and thank you for joining this presentation. Today we're going to be discussing using recipes in W4 to streamline case review. So a little overview. Today we're going to find out what recipes are and how they can be useful in your cases. Then I'm going to do a little demonstration on recipes and using the default ones that are ready to go right when you install W4, and also how to make your own custom recipes when any of the pre-configured ones don't fit. So what are recipes? Recipes are a new feature in W4 and are basically pre-configured searches that are based on specific case types. You can use recipes to run across your data to quickly show the relevant artifacts for that case. Some of the default recipes that come preloaded into W4 include a recipe for IP theft, misuse of company time, last day activity, and the list goes on. As an example, the cryptocurrency recipe will include any artifacts that are related to cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin or Ethereum. And the misuse of company time recipe will include artifacts such as email sent to personal or free email accounts, program activity, social media, and other activities that can be linked to time wasting. That's just a couple of examples, and there will be more added as time goes on. If you don't think any of the preloaded recipes will work for you, you do have the option of making your own custom recipe or even editing one of the preloaded ones. You'll have the option of selecting the artifacts that you're interested in, any keyword list that may have terms related to the case type, or if you know of any specific date ranges, you will be able to add them to your recipe. The goal of recipes is to basically save you some time and allow you to create a template that you can click on and quickly get to the data that you're interested in without having to wade through the search tab where you may have a lot of artifacts that are irrelevant to your case. So it should allow you to save a good amount of time there. So now I'm just going to do a quick presentation on the new feature. And I have a case open here that's already been processed and ready to go. And so there's this new tab that's been added to W4 up here on the top, just labeled recipes. So once you go there, that's where all of our recipes are going to be. You'll be able to pretty much just click on any of these pre-configured ones by selecting run, and it'll immediately run it. If you notice next to each recipe there's a name in the description, and you'll also have a number next to the recipe. These are the number of artifacts that are respondent to that specific recipe. So in this case I have loaded up an IP theft case, and we have a good amount of artifacts for those. And if you scroll down, you can see all the other different recipes that we have set up. You have the option to add a new one or import one, which I'll go over a little bit later. So in this case, you have the option to also edit, export, or remove the recipe. I'm going to go ahead and go through the editing process of this IP theft one before I run it, just so you guys can get an idea of how that works. So you click edit, and it'll bring you to this recipe editing screen. The first thing you can edit is if you go over to this gear icon on the top right. If you click on that, it'll give you the option to change the name of the IP theft recipe. You can change the description, and this is pretty good because you can take the IP theft recipe, and let's say you want to have two different recipes that are related to IP theft with different focuses. Say one IP theft recipe is focused on maybe USB devices, and another one may be focused on printed documents or remote access and things like that. You do have the option to just pretty much save the recipe and then make another one, duplicate it, and keep it all the same, but just change some minor things between them, and just maybe make one for each specific scenario that you're interested in having for this. So you, like I said, you can change the title, the description, and when evaluated, show these categories in the recipe search tab. You have the option to show all of the categories or only the categories defined in that specific recipe. So this will be the one that we'll probably choose most of the time because we really only want the categories that are defined in our recipe. We don't want all of the other categories. You do have the option to change the icon here, and that's basically any JPEG or PNG image that you might have. So I'm going to keep that the same and just cancel out of there. You have the option to change the source. So in this case, we only have the one source, but if you had multiple sources and you only wanted to apply this recipe on any specific drive or folder image that you had taken, you do have the option to do that here. For the date range, if let's say you have a limitation in your search warrant where you can only search within specific dates, you can set those dates here so you can only get that data and make sure that you're covered through your legal authority. Or if you just want to perform some data culling and you're pretty sure of the time when the crime happened and you don't want to look at anything outside of those dates, you can also add them here. And then the last part here is your artifacts. So you can, these are artifacts obviously linked to IP theft. So you have files sent to personal accounts, USB devices activity, network share access, printed documents, and things like that. If there is a specific focus in your case, you can pretty much, like let's say it's just remote access and cloud storage programs. You can right-click these and remove the category, and it'll basically just remove that. In this case, I'm actually going to remove the cloud storage programs because there's a lot of hits for that, and I know that the cloud program wasn't used in this specific crime. So I'm going to remove that so that we only have the data that we're interested in. And if you'd like to add anything else, you pretty much just press the add button here, and it'll bring up the new artifact selection screen. And here you pretty much have a bunch of categories where you can select the specific artifacts. And there are subcategories, or you can just select to add an entire category if you'd like. So if I want to add the entire system category, I could just press OK, and it'll add that here. But I don't want that one because that has way too many hits that we may not be interested in. You also have the option to export this. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And basically it just exports a JSON file. So if you want to export these, and let's say you have a bunch of different people in your lab that you made a specific recipe for, you can just give them this JSON file and they'll be able to import it to their W4 installation, and they'll be able to use that recipe that you created. The other thing that you might want to do is if you guys are doing a lot of triage, you may want to put this in your portable disk for your triage disks and upload them through there. And then everyone, it's just a faster way to get those recipes out there that you want everyone to be using. So cancel out of that. This has been saved, and I'm going to go ahead and just run the recipe. And this is pretty much created instantly. Everything's already indexed. It's basically just taking those artifacts that were listed within that recipe and putting it all together here for you. And it's going to put that in a separate tab that looks very similar to the search tab, except instead of looking at 49,000 records like we have under the search tab, we're limited here to 396. And these are the artifacts that are most relevant to our case. And this is a more manageable number here. This is something that you can kind of throw in here in set it to the events view and just view all of those relevant documents that are related to your case in the order of which they happened. So it's a pretty good feature in order to allow you to get to that interesting data right away. I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to go back. There's also some, when you use the number that's next to the name for that specific recipe, it'll tell you, as I said before, there's the number of hits for that specific recipe. So if, let's say, you're working a fraud case and you don't see too many hits for that, but you think that maybe cryptocurrency may have been involved, we see that there are obviously some hits in this case for cryptocurrencies. So that number can kind of be an indicator of, where you should probably be looking. And the cryptocurrency recipe is basically just cryptocurrency related program usage such as Bitcoin. And if we run that, we're immediately going to have, anything that was related to Bitcoin usage under the all supported items here. So we see that, Bitcoin Core was executed on March 4th, and you can see that there's definitely some Bitcoin activity here, and that's something that you can pretty much get immediately by running that cryptocurrency recipe. Another thing you can do is you have a few different options here within this screen where you can either refresh the screen, you can show empty categories. So if there were some of these artifacts where the category was empty and you're interested in knowing which of those categories were empty, you can select that option and it'll show you. And if you want to show the recipe categories only, just those that are related to your recipe, you can do that there too. You can get rid of that and just set it to the normal view. And this is a pretty good option that you'll probably use most of the time. You also have the option to limit by sources. So as of right now, we're looking at all of the sources. And if you scroll down here to the desktop, you'll get just the users that are within that computer. So if you want to limit it to just, say, the main user of this computer, John Doe, it'll limit some of the items that were found only to those that are under that specific user account. So that's just another data culling technique where you can remove things that may not be relevant to the case. So that's pretty useful. So if you go over, if we go back over to the recipes tab, I'm actually going to open up a new case so that I can show you how you can make your own recipe. So basically you're just going to scroll all the way down to this add new button where you can write your own recipe. And say we're interested in drug or narcotics. You can add a description here, artifacts related to the sale of illegal substances. And I want to make sure to select that it's only categories defined in the recipe. And then I'm just going to change the icon to some drugs here. And I'm going to add that recipe. And it's going to bring you straight to the recipe edit screen where we can add whatever we're interested in for this specific case. So for drugs and narcotic cases, I'm going to run this through all of the sources, and I'm going to keep the date range for everything. And when you go to add, and you can determine what's the most important for your specific case. For drug cases, keywords are pretty important, so I'm going to add that here. And then I'm going to add some of the communications. This specific drug dealer was sending tracking numbers with his packages that were filled with drugs, and we want to be able to associate him with those packages. And we can do that by checking his email and hoping to find some of those tracking numbers that he sent his users. And we also know that there are some communications in here, so we're going to add chat messages. Communications are very important in drug cases. And then maybe throw some phone calls in there too. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and run it. So again, this is just a quick way to get all that data that you're interested in, and we can immediately see that there's a conversation going on that hit on some of our drug terms. And if you keep scrolling down, there are several emails including a package ready for pickup where we can see that tracking number that we were looking for. So it's a good way to limit the amount of data that you have to look at and just get straight into the stuff that you're interested in. So as I mentioned before, the other thing you can do is if you opted to say export this drug recipe to other devices or other W4 installations, you'd pretty much just hit export. You can export that JSON file and just take that to whatever machine you'd like, and then you'd come back over here and just do the import button. And I have a social media .json here that I made before. I'm going to double click that, and it's going to load up that recipe for us. And if you'd like to look at that, it's basically just chat messages and social media artifacts, which we don't seem to have a lot of except for those chat messages on this one. But that's basically how you would import any recipes that anyone else made. So it's really easy to share any recipes that you made. So that's pretty much all I have for this specific case. I don't think there are any questions, so this concludes the presentation. If you think of any questions or if you'd like to be a part of our W4 or Intella beta testing team, you can get early access to test some of the new features, including recipes. You can reach out to me directly at mel.ortiz@vound-software.com. I hope you enjoyed the webinar and enjoy the rest of your day.